So hello fellow Earthlings. This is Earthling 6455463728. And I wanted to do another recording of when help does not lead to helplessness. Because I feel like I left out some important points. Again, I'm Earthling 64 yada yada yada. And much in the same way as Samuel Clemens decided that he was going to become Mark Twain, I have decided that I'm going to use Earthling 64 yada yada yada. I have an MBA, for what it's worth. I have a computer science degree that I got using a scholarship. I have traveled the 7 seas, no, maybe some 5 seas. Have I run a marathon? I don't know. I've done a lot of stuff that's, I think's pretty cool. I haven't skydived. I wish I could do that. Anyway, on to the topic. So, yesterday it's yesterday. I was talking about when help leads to helplessness. And I think I may have given some people what they feel like the ammunition to suggest that, yeah, you shouldn't help poor people. Yeah, you shouldn't help, like minorities. Yeah, women, they're fine. And I think that there's some gaps in that assumption. And I think I'll go back over my primary example, which is myself, to show when help does not lead to helplessness. And then I also have a good example, I feel, with a guy who, did he work for somebody who was a Nobel laureate? I think that might be it. So with respect to myself, the help that I got that definitely didn't lead to helplessness was my mother took me to the library when I was a kid. And she didn't just take me to the library once. She would take me, I think, every weekend at least, to the local library. And I could pick out whatever book that I wanted. And I think even my grandmother might have taken me. For example, they would go shopping at the equivalent of the farmer's market kind of thing, and they would leave me at the library with my sister, I think, or maybe my sister wasn't there, I'm not sure. Maybe she went with them sometimes. Anyway, that prompt, that help, that, hey, this is fertile ground, see how far you can go or grow. That really, I liked reading so much that it probably gave me a lack of social experience. Because, when it was recess time, at school, for example, there were books at school. And I remember distinctly comparing the two things, as in, should I go out and play, or should I read this book about magnetism? And unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, I always chose the book about magnetism. I guess there was never an end to the amount of books that were available to be read. And that's what I did all through high school, all through all of my life. I mean, I don't read that many books now, and I don't have a subscription to Audible. If I hear about a book that I might be interested in, I go on YouTube and see if somebody posted it when they shouldn't have. And a lot of times they did, and I listened to it, like the extended phenotype. I was interested in that, I went looking, boom, there it is. A friend of mine suggested a book. I think it was How Not to Be Wrong. I went on YouTube, boop, there it is. Sometimes it can take a lot of reading or Googling to find. And sometimes I can't find the books at all, but I can often find a lecture by the author of the book. And one of the things about lectures by the author of the book, when they're talking about their book, is that they often bring the main points of their book to the lecture. So I find that that is often a good enough workaround. Anyway, enough about me. Another example of when help doesn't lead to helplessness is with respect to, there was this guy, I can't remember his actual name, but he did work for one of these people who won a Nobel Prize. Anyway, him and his wife decided that they were going to go out and live in the wilderness far from any other people, and his wife was going to teach his kids. I'm sure you probably heard similar stories to this. I'm wondering, I saw a movie that was like this. Anyway, suffice to say that the wife died, and the guy was like, well, now what am I going to do? Because I was going to do all of this studying and whatever, and she was going to teach the kids. So all he did was he made sure that they could read, and he got the homeschooling material and desks, and there they were in a room reading the homeschooling material on their own, doing the problems on their own, and in the end, these were kids without any other support. These were kids that aced the SATs. All of his kids, he had a lot of kids. And as a matter of fact, there was one of his youngest kids who did manage to find somebody who was able to tutor them. And when there was a vast disparity between the kid who actually got a tutor and the other kids who didn't have a tutor. I remember in one example, maybe he was talking to the teacher, and maybe they were talking about fractions, let's say. And he was asking the tutor, so when do you guys think you're going to get around to improper fractions? And the tutor was, oh, wow, I don't know when we're going to do that. That might be way in the future. And as it turned out, that kid, the tutor wasn't able to continue helping him. And for a long time, that kid was very sullen when they had to go back to reading on his own. And the description that they talk about is that he would sit at his desk, and for a long time he didn't do very much at his desk. But he gradually got back into the habit of studying on his own and was able to do quite well. But my point is, in that example, having a tutor actually was holding his kid back. The tutor didn't think that they would be able to get very far, and all these other kids were able to survive, and not only survive, they were able to thrive without anybody teaching them, just learning on their own, doing all the exercises on their own. And the kid that actually had somebody help them performed, you can say, arguably the worst of all of his kids. In another example, I know I've used my sister to suggest that, hey, I helped my sister, and my sister had support from my mother, and she doesn't seem to be as self-reliant and as confident as I might be in terms of trying to do things on her own. And I think, I was also mentioning the fact that support can be a hindrance. That person who is giving you some encouragement in one instance might be telling you not to run so fast or play so hard or get so sweaty in another instance. And unfortunately, I think that that's the case. I think that my sister, as a girl, would have been constantly reminded that she was a girl and actually less than a guy. That she couldn't do this and she couldn't do that. And a certain amount of fear and would have been instilled in her, which is the opposite of actual support. But anybody looking at the situation would be like, yeah, you're close to your mom, or yeah, you have, as a girl, people that you can rely on around you. And that actually is corrosive to your own self-confidence and your ability of seeing yourself as being competent. So while, let's say with respect, let's turn to minorities, for example. I don't think that minorities suffer from, what's the word? Anyway, what I want to say, to be explicit, is that I think that minorities suffer from negative pressure or a force that is holding them back, as opposed to, hey, they need help. I think I remember there was a story that I read where they said that they were able to find housing for people, minorities, outside of their neighborhoods, outside of these places where bad neighborhoods. And one would expect that the kids who were able to get out of the bad neighborhoods, these minority neighborhoods, would perform better in school. What they found was actually the reverse. They found that kids who actually left these minority neighborhoods because of, what's it called, low-income housing, they actually performed worse than the kids who were able to stay in their neighborhoods, but they were just maybe assisted in terms of food, in terms of whatever support within their own neighborhood. Meaning that when the minorities went out of their neighborhoods, they would have encountered, I said it wrong, I think, negative pressure, not really. They would have encountered obstacles that would have been put in place by people who didn't see them as the regular folk, per se. And I think it's important to note that for myself, I think as a guy, people wouldn't say to me, you can't do this or you can't do that, specifically because of my gender. My mom might say it because she's never seen anybody do this. Whatever, particular thing that I might be trying to do, she might have never seen someone do it. So she might say, yeah, this isn't for you or that isn't for you. But being a guy, it would never have been that you shouldn't do this because you can't. And actually, as a matter of fact, I would have been free from having too much attention from my mother because it would have been paid more to my sister. And being free of that stuff that's pulling me back, which could be called negative pressure, I suppose, that actually would have enabled me to strive and do better. And I think that every seedling, quote unquote, can do with water and fertile ground, and then just leave it alone to do what it does. People who don't perform or don't appear to perform, it might not be that it's about leave them alone and if you try to help these people, they'll be helpless. No, you leave them alone under good circumstances. You can't leave a kid in a vacuum and expect the kid to survive. You need a bare minimum, but beyond that, you probably shouldn't get in their way either. Anyway, I don't know how well I would have explained this stuff or how I think about it, but that's me for now. So, like, share, subscribe, dislike, comment, whichever. Hopefully, just as much as you would like it if someone else was contributing to your recording. Peace. Have a good one.